Hello. Are we live? Has this happened? Is this happening? I think it's happening. Okay, I think it's happening, everyone. How is everyone doing? I'm so excited for the first HFC CareCon. I'm sure everyone else is excited as well. If this isn't working, someone send me a message just so I'm sure that it's not working, but I think it's working. I'm so excited for today. As I think all of you know, improving the lives of caregivers is a really big priority for us here at HFC. So we are so thrilled that over 1,300 of you have signed up to join us today on National Caregivers Day for some learning and some laughing and, of course, connection, which is the thing that has perhaps become the most difficult in this past year. In the 15 years that my family cared for my mom, Adele, during her journey with Alzheimer's, I got a front row seat to how truly difficult being a caregiver can be. Caregivers are superheroes. They are selfless, they are hardworking, and they are often completely exhausted. They have dedicated their lives to caring for their loved one, and they often go unthanked and unsupported. That's why when my husband Seth and a few friends and I founded HFC in 2012, we knew we wanted to do whatever we could to help caregivers navigate this journey. We had virtual support groups since before these pandemic days, I should say, because driving across town to a support group just isn't possible sometimes when you're caring for a loved one. We have provided outlets for caregivers to share their stories because sometimes the only way to end the stigma that surrounds Alzheimer's is through talking about it, normalizing it, and making sure no one feels alone. We have forged partnerships with individuals and organizations who prioritize and facilitate teaching and supporting caregivers. We've provided over 300,000 hours of free at-home care for caregivers who are taking care of their loved ones at home, but can't afford the wildly high costs of respite care. And today we've gathered leading experts to provide you with tools and tips, which we hope you will be able to use as you continue your incredibly special and important work as caregivers. But whether you've chosen care path 1 or 2, our main goal today is that while you're learning, you'll also laugh a bit and leave feeling loved and supported by HFC and your fellow caregivers here today. CareCon wouldn't be possible without the support of our wonderful sponsors, our presenting sponsor, Kensington Senior Living, our premier sponsor, Biogen, our panel sponsors, ASI and Home Instead, and our other very generous supporters who made this event possible. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Tiffany Tomaso from Kensington Senior Living, our partner and presenting sponsor.
Thank you, Lauren. My name is Tiffany Tomaso, co-founder of Kensington Senior Living. My team and I are honored to partner with HFC as the presenting sponsor for the inaugural CareCon event. CareCon, an event for caregivers, is close to my heart. I have worked with seniors and their families for over 35 years, but my journey to senior care started in my teens. As a volunteer with my church youth group, I visited seniors in their homes and in nursing homes. And while in college, I lived with my grandparents. Through both experiences, I learned firsthand the important and often difficult roles families take on as caregivers. At Kensington, our promise is to love and care for your family as we do our own. It is the foundation of how we operate and what families can count on when choosing one of our communities. We believe that there is no greater calling than supporting and partnering with families in the care of their loved ones. My team and I have thoroughly enjoyed working with the HFC team, and we look forward to supporting future events. Thank you, Lauren, for your passion and commitment to caregivers around the world.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm just, I'm technically, I'm 50% there. Okay, so we're so excited Thank you, Tiffany and Kensington Senior Living again for being our amazing sponsor today. I'm going to turn the program over to our moderators for our first panels. I'll see you back here after the panel with a special guest and some giveaways. You've, I believe, chosen your care paths. Panel 1 is creating community and taking action. Our moderators, Kimberly Williams-Paisley and Ashley Williams. Our amazing panelists, Ajin Poo, Jason Resendez, Tracy Reyes, and Brian Van Buren. Care Path 2, which is Employing Levity with Sean Hayes. And our panelists, Danny Klein, Jacqueline Joyce, Jay Smiles, and Saran Rothberg. So I will turn it over to the technical gods who will hopefully make this happen for all of you.
Are we up next, Kim?
Am I still on? I have no idea.
I think it might be, if you're 50% of the tech, then Kim and I are the other 50%. Maybe about 25. So eventually it'll add up to 100.
I see our picture. Should we just start talking?
Yeah, let's start. You take it away.
Hi, everybody. All right. I am Kimberly Williams-Paisley. This is my sister, Ashley Williams. We have lived with Alzheimer's with our mother, who passed away in 2016. She had an 11-year journey with the disease, and we felt very isolated at the time. So we are really excited to be a part of this panel. Our mom told us not to talk about it. There was a lot of stigma that she felt about her disease. So it was a really tough time in our family. And since then, both of us have found great solace and healing in reaching out to the community around us and talking about it. I wrote a book, I wrote a memoir about our journey, and then also doing some fundraising and just trying to lean into the cause. And I host an annual dance party in Nashville where people come together and they dance and we raise money. And Ashley, you're doing the same.
Yeah, same. Every year, one of my best friends is Nikki Deloach, and every year we do the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And one of my favorite things about people coming together, both Kim and I have both sort of chosen a physical representation of our energy regarding Alzheimer's disease. So Kim dances, I walk and talk, and really both are a vehicle for communication. I remember when my mom was diagnosed and she sat us all down and she said, no one is allowed to speak about this, because if people hear that I have Alzheimer's disease, they're going to start treating me like I have Alzheimer's disease, and I won't let it happen. And we respected that. But the problem was that we desperately needed our community, and it turned out so did she. So I think in hindsight, it was a bit of an antiquated approach. And I am so heartened today to see a group of people gathering together to talk about something that at one point I was forbidden to talk about. So I'm standing in the face of my mother, who I respect and love, and saying, no, we're going to talk about it because we need to. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you for choosing to share how you're feeling about it and what's hard and what's great. And let's work together today to really come together around this disease. And I think I just want to kick it off to Tracy Reyes and just ask you, why do you think that building community is important in the Alzheimer's space?
Hi, everyone. I'm Tracy. I am on the HFC review board. And, I first had experience with Alzheimer's when I was 21, and I became a caregiver for my dad, who had early onset Alzheimer's. And I realized how important community is. Just this disease is so isolating because your loved one is in a position where they're in their own mental headspace, very much far removed from what's going on. And like you guys mentioned, sometimes your family doesn't want to talk about it, or they don't want to deal with it, or they're not as supportive as we would like them to be. So that really perpetuates this isolating environment. And having that community helps us, kind of form this common thread, if you will, where we're coming together or as a community with that common unity and being able to support each other, being able to say, I know what you're feeling. I know how frustrating this can be. And it just enables us to have this very special bond in this relationship. And previously, I think we kind of felt stuck with our community only being that physical space. And now we have these great opportunities where it can be so much more than that, where it doesn't matter where you are, you can find that community, you can find that support that helps us just, get past today. I just need to get past today. This is so exhausting. And then maybe just this hour, just one more hour. And as we all know too well, Alzheimer's is that kind of disease where you're just looking for that one moment, that one just little bit of time where you can feel like, okay, I can do this, I can handle this. And that's really where that community comes in. That's where that community helps uplift you and make you feel like, yes, we can get through this. It's not just you, but we're all here together. So it just, I can't imagine what it's like to really go at this alone without such a strong community.
Yeah, that's so beautifully put. I don't know if you did it on purpose, but you said common unity. And that's a new way of looking at that word. Yeah, what a beautiful way of looking at that. Because when I, Kim said, I think in her book, if you've met one person with Alzheimer's disease, you've met one person with Alzheimer's disease or dementia, because each path through this disease is unique. But what is common and what can unify us are these absolutely great equalizers of the same issues over and over again. Our issue with my mother and driving, or with introducing a caregiver into the home, or when we took our mother to a home, which was the Kensington Senior Living in New York, where we, by the way, had an amazing experience. But each one of those transitions throughout my mother's disease, it turned out were universal. And at the time, I thought we were totally unique. We weren't. And I now see that our path was a very common one. And now being able to get together and talk about it and share resources, I think will allow all of us to not feel as alone in our own journeys.
Absolutely. And our father was the primary caregiver, and he felt so alone. And it got to the point where we were even more worried about his health than our mother's, frankly. So, yeah, and I love that. I love that concept of common unity, Tracy. That's really cool. And Jen, I'm wondering if you can talk about how building community can better support family caregivers, and also what's the importance of storytelling on the relationship between caregivers and those who need care.
I love these questions, and I feel like I want to come dance with you and walk with you. And so you got to let me know when this is all happening. And happy National Caregivers Day, everybody. I mean, community is probably the single most important tool we have to build resilience. When I think about what we've all been through in this pandemic, and I work with a lot of professional caregivers who are caregiving for people full time, including some of the people, most vulnerable to the coronavirus, like older people, people with disabilities, people with all kinds of chronic illnesses, including dementias. And when they find each other in community, it is the single most powerful tool they have to kind of stay in it, to stay grounded, to keep going another day. And so many of them have told us that having a community is the thing that makes them feel resilient and strong in these really difficult times. And I think all of us can probably relate to that at some level. The other thing is that there's so many of us, right? Former First Lady Rosalynn Carter once said there's only 4 kinds of people in the world: people who are caregivers or will be caregivers, people who need care or will need care. And it's actually, many of us are in more than one of those identities at any given time. And if there are so many of us who are sharing this experience, that's a lot of power to change things. It's a lot of power to drive us towards finding a cure for Alzheimer's, to finding more supports in our policies for caregivers, to catalyze all kinds of change that we know are long overdue. And that brings me to the power of storytelling. You mentioning your father actually really sparked this for me, which is that this entire week, we've been working with Justin Baldoni and Man Enough, his platform that's about having conversations about masculinity. And they launched a whole series this week that is about driving storytelling among men who are caregivers. Because what we've found is that men have an even more isolated kind of experience, where there's a lot of fear of asking for help because of traditional notions of masculinity and what being a man and being strong means, and that we just having a few men sit around a dinner table and share their stories has literally catalyzed thousands of men to share their stories online, and it has been so moving. And we know there's a ton of men doing this work, but we just don't talk about it, or having this experience, but we just don't talk about it. And that in and of itself is starting to change culture, right? Bringing those stories forward, helping us see that this experience is everywhere, and we have just never really fully honored it.
Absolutely. And our father is such a wonderful storyteller. You know, that's actually one of his gifts, but it's not something that he did while he was living it, you know, while he was going through the caregiving, because again, you know, he was stifled that way. She didn't want him to talk about it. So yeah, again, just encouraging people to share their stories. And are you doing that virtually with people, or virtual and in person?
Yeah. The campaign is called Man Enough to Care. And so with the hashtag Care With Me, people have been sharing their stories, but you can go to see all the videos and some of the specific stories on the Man Enough platform. And I can drop a link in the chat too.
Oh, please do. Please drop the link. I would love it if people here had that resource, people watching had that resource. You know, my dad talked about how he got remember Kim, he had a little bit of a Superman thing going on. And he did do a little bit of writing on it, because he's always been a leader in our family and a grounding force for all of us. And there was a lot of pressure to pull off the effortlessness involved in the patriarchy, essentially. And it took its toll on him. And I think if he'd heard from other men struggling, I think it would have allowed him to feel like the things he was struggling with were more acceptable, you know? So I would encourage everybody to go ahead and check that out. I think that's amazing. Well, I would love to move on to Jason Resendez and just ask you a little bit about the underserved and the high-risk communities that are impacted by Alzheimer's disease. And can you talk a little bit about what's being done to address the social determinants of care?
Sure. First, thanks for having me, and happy National Caregivers Day, everybody. And I love this, the questions and the focus on bringing stories out of the shadows, the story of male caregivers out of the shadows, the story of people of color who really shoulder a lot of the care in this country, both unpaid and paid, especially on the paid side. Important to bring those stories into the spotlight, but I would be remiss if I didn't just recognize that this is an amazing panel of women who make things work, and like with caregiving, I think that's important to recognize too. So just want to say excited to be with all of you as part of this conversation. So I couldn't agree more with Tracy and her approach and talking about this as a common unity. I mean, I think dementia and caregiving really is a strong bond that so many folks are connected by. But at the same time, I think there's different levels of privilege that affect our ability to provide that care in ways that allow us to live our lives and to reach our potential. And that is mitigated by things like racial and ethnic disparities in things like dementia. So in my role at UsAgainstAlzheimer's, I lead our Center for Brain Health Equity, which is supported by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And we're very much focused on bringing those communities that are over-impacted yet underserved by the movement to the table to get access to culturally tailored education, resources, and to empower providers to be part of that solution, particularly Black and Brown nurses. And this is really critical. By 2030, nearly 40% of all Americans living with Alzheimer's or related dementia will be Black or Latino. And this is something that we're not ready for across the board in terms of our care system. We're certainly not ready for it in terms of our care infrastructure and the lack of care supports and policy supporting these individuals. We're not ready for it in terms of how we support young people. 15% of dementia caregivers in this country are millennials. 47% of that community are providing care all by themselves. And it is those folks, particularly the Black, brown, caregivers of color in that age group, who are forced to leave the workforce to provide that care because they don't have access to policies like paid family and medical leave. So there's just a unfortunate lack of focus and understanding and addressing these disparities that make dementia really the last chapter in so many of our Black and Latino community members' stories. And so we're really focused on driving action around these harsh realities and doing it in a way that's pushing the government, that's pushing industry, pushing the nonprofit sector to really understand these differences and embrace an equity-based approach. Not just think about this in terms of the disparities, but really the underlying reasons why we're at, certain communities are disadvantaged when it comes to brain health. And so you mentioned the social determinants of care, which I love, and Aijen, you mentioned Rosalynn Carter, and really the work that RCI is doing around helping us understand caregiving as a social determinant of health, I think is critical. Caregiving and our roles as caregivers impact our ability to lead a healthy life. And this has been proven by the research in dementia that if you are providing dementia care, you yourself are at higher risk for developing dementia or brain health related issues in later life. So we really have to start thinking about those underlying conditions and reasons for these disparities. And that's why we're really focused on understanding and advancing a comprehensive framework that looks at access to, economic stability, quality education, living without air pollution. It's really these interconnected issues that affect our brain health over the life course. And I'm glad that we're making that part of the discussion today.
Absolutely. Those are such important things to bring up, Jason, and thank you so much for that. Yeah, because it does take an entire village to care for one person with dementia. So people are having to quit their jobs or juggle a job and caregiving, and it's so expensive, it can be debilitating for an entire family. Not to mention, if you're trying to get the patient to the doctor's appointments, you're foregoing your own doctor's appointments because there just aren't enough hours in the day. And yeah, that's all really important stuff.
I remember, Kim, I don't know if you remember this, but there was a certain point where we became more worried about my dad's health than our mom's health, because he was the primary caregiver, and his literally just his own self-care went out the window. Same thing, missing doctor's appointments, and really just more than anything else, the stress. Like I remember him saying the laundry, like he was staying up until 2:00 in the morning doing the laundry. My mother, was having a lot of trouble keeping clean, and there was a lot of cleanup work going on, and he also didn't want to embarrass her, so he needed to do that work when she was asleep, and it was cutting into his sleep. And I think it's really an important thing for caregivers watching today to remember that their health needs to be just as much, if not more, of a priority, because as Jason said, the more stress you're under, that can set you up perfectly for your own dementia issues later in life. So I really appreciate you mentioning that.
I have a question that any of our wonderful panelists could address. Do you have one tangible action that today's attendees can take with them after CareCon today?
Well, one of the things that I think is also kind of a silver lining of everything that we've been through is that we have the opportunity, as we think about what it looks like to recover from the COVID crisis and rebuild, we have the opportunity to really invest in our caregivers and our caregiving systems and policies like paid leave, like home and community-based services, and expand access to those services, and support for family caregivers, right? There's so many resources that we have needed for so long. And we actually have the chance, as we think about what it means to recover economically, to win those policies. And so one action I would propose is if our listeners or our watcher viewers would call their members of Congress and set up a meeting and actually share your story as a caregiver and talk about how important it is for us to have policies that support our caregivers as part of our economic recovery. If we're all struggling to manage care, how are we going to get back to work? How are we going to, right, do the things that are going to be necessary to recover and rebuild? So we have an opportunity to really make big change for caregivers. And so I hope everyone in this community will get involved.
What a great idea. You know, Kim did this amazing thing with her son, who's a teenager, and they went to, do you want to talk a little bit, Kim, about you know, homeschooling? A lot of us are homeschooling our kids, and us calling our members of Congress and campaigning teaches our kids as well about their own advocacy. And a lot of us are trying to come up with interesting ways to inspire our children. And, you know, talking about grandma to their congressperson or mom to their congressperson could be a really cool, you know, avenue for education as well.
Absolutely. And if you, I mean, I took Huck with me to DC, and we were advocating actually for global health. It wasn't about Alzheimer's, but just that seeing that kids too can make a difference. And if you can't actually travel to DC and sit down, just, yeah, absolutely. Writing letters, making phone calls, every email or phone call makes a difference. And when one person does it, it counts for like many more people. So yeah, I would definitely encourage. There are a lot of people, I know there's a lot of noise in DC, but there are a lot of people also working hard to get these things done. So it does make a difference. I absolutely agree. Does anyone else want to chime in on that question? Tracy or Jason? Calls to action?
Sure, I would definitely add a bit of mindfulness to our situations, and really taking the time to learn how your body responds to stress. We all know that it's not as easy as just going to the spa or taking a break from our loved ones. Sometimes we can't even use the bathroom in peace. But realizing, okay, when I feel stressed, where is that stress sitting? Am I feeling it on my shoulders? I distinctly remember those nights where my dad would stay up, you know, at 3, 4 in the morning before I had to go to work. And my stress just formed right here. And it's just this pressure, and I can identify it, and I knew what it was, and I knew how that was affecting my body. So knowing what I could do to help relieve that tension, you know, taking deep breaths, maybe doing a little bit of acupressure, and just kind of focusing on your body as best you can. And sometimes that might look like just sitting there and taking 3 deep breaths, because realistically, we know what's within our capabilities. We know that we might not have 2 minutes to spare, but maybe we can give ourselves that care and that love that we give to our caregivers. I mean, to our loved ones, and be mindful and appreciative of all the work that we're doing. Because I think sometimes as caregivers, we're very hard on ourselves, that we're not doing enough, that we're not, you know, we got frustrated because our loved one was acting up or being, you know, aggressive towards us, and we get very hard on ourselves. And oftentimes we say a lot of mean things to ourselves that we would never say to anybody else. So in all of that, it's just really, you know, caring for ourselves as the caregivers.
Absolutely. We can definitely relate to that. And also the issue of guilt. You know, I haven't met a caregiver who hasn't felt some amount of guilt. And that was something that we had to work hard on trying to let go of, because guilt is not your friend. And really, caregiving is a hard job. And there's no easy way to get through it. There's no graceful way necessarily. So really, like, that was something that we had to work on, was just letting go of the stress and also the guilt.
Yeah.
In it.
And Kim and I, just as sisters, we also have a brother, but you know, my dad was in New York taking care of my mom, and all the rest of us were scattered all over the country and had our own jobs and our own families and our own lives. And we'd come in when we could, but a lot of it was over the phone. My dad was the primary caregiver, and my sister and my brother and I were just, trying to get in touch with him, and then he was calling, and yeah, being able to talk to Kim and my brother about how hard it was to be watching from afar and to not be able to be there, and having her listen and forgive me was really important.
And I'm sure that's only intensified now that COVID is happening and so many family members are separated from people. It's even harder to find community when we're so isolated from each other already.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I would just throw in my piece of advice just to build on what Aijen said, and I think dovetails for what you just said, Kim, is the importance of being open about your caregiving story. And so that goes back to the theme of storytelling. And so many folks don't think about caregiving as a role. I think about my family, Mexican-American traditional family, my role is as a son, as a grandson, and I might not necessarily, and so many folks I think in my position wouldn't think about, taking care of one's grandfather, or my grandmother would have long stints where she would live with us when I was growing up. I never thought about my mom being a caregiver. She was just a daughter to her mother. But I think, thinking about this as a role, as work, as labor, is something that I think is really important for us psychologically, to think about how important that is and the power that exists in that role and how important that is to society. So reflecting on that power, I think, is important and can be empowering for individuals who are often feeling, again, alone in this journey. And then last thing I'd say is, if you're in a position to share that story, that role as a caregiver with your employer, I think so many folks and employers don't really understand, partly because they don't want to understand how much of their workforce is playing this role. But I think if we were more open, particularly for those of us who are providing or supporting caregiving for older adults, that journey, that story would help to normalize the importance of supporting that workforce and in that community. And can help us, I think, build the case for policies like paid family and medical leave.
What I've never thought of that, but you're right. The more people mentioning to their employers, I'm dealing with an ill family member, the more normal it is, and the less it stigmatizes Alzheimer's disease, but also, can make it more normal to help support the people working a job and another job. And I appreciate you saying, like, you have a role, and that makes that job incredibly important. And it's funny, like, I know as a working mom, I have a similar thing where I don't want to tell people I have kids because I'm afraid they're going to think that I'm not as committed. But then I force myself to, because I know that the more, awesome moms who are doing their jobs really well and saying that they have children, the better it is for all moms. So the same goes here. And I think that's such a cool point. Thank you for that.
I'm so glad you made that connection, because I do think that this is about culture change, right? Changing the culture that makes it hard for moms to talk about being moms. For us as children to talk about how we're caring for our aging parents. We've been taught that caregiving is something that you just have to kind of shoulder and do kind of behind closed doors, not talk about it, just get it done. And if you somehow struggle, it's a personal failure of some sort. And I think that has to shift. This is not about personal burdens or failures. This is about, yes, a responsibility that we take for the people that we love. And it's a collective responsibility. All of us are dealing with this, right? It's an experience that we all share or will share, and we need better support. We need better policies. We need a different kind of culture around it. And I think that every time we speak up, to both of your points, it starts to chip away at the culture and create something new.
Yeah. And I'll just jump in, because someone just said something in the chat that I think is really important to call out. They said it shouldn't just be on the shoulders of caregivers. It should be all of us as allies talking about this, which I think is such a great point. And I think that is how culture change, really happens. And we're working in allyship with those folks who we might know are struggling to provide that care while they work. So that's something I'll take away. I think it's a really important point.
Yeah, and I do think the culture is shifting in a lot of positive ways. Certainly since our mom was diagnosed, now more and more people, unfortunately, we had Brian Van Buren was going to be on our panel, and due to health issues, he can't make it today, but we have more and more people coming forward and saying, I'm living with Alzheimer's, and this is the face of Alzheimer's. This is what it looks like. This is what my life is like. And the more people that are brave enough to do that, I think that will also help shift the culture. But I've seen a lot of positive growth in this area just since we've been living this journey since 2006. That's
Absolutely.
great.
Yeah, me too. What's happening?
Do we have time for for another couple?
Yeah, I think we have like maybe a couple more minutes. Yeah.
Can you guys talk a little bit about what community can do to reduce barriers to care? How can building a community reduce barriers to care?
I think it definitely starts creating that awareness. Sometimes we are our own barriers to care because we feel so, again, that common word of isolation, we feel so isolated and we don't know where to begin. Whether you're navigating the insurance system or Medicaid or any of that, you sometimes feel stuck. And reaching out to your community will help, kind of like a guiding light, so to speak, where they can show you what is out there. There's so many things that my family and I weren't aware of until we were out and we found our Alzheimer's community, and we were able to navigate that with the help and knowing that you're not alone in this, that there are resources out there. But sometimes when you're in the trenches of things, it's so hard to see. I think there's an expression, I don't know if you guys know, I am probably going to butcher it, but when you're deep in the forest, it's hard to see the trees. Is it something like that? And it's just, you're so overwhelmed by everything that it's hard to access the care and the things that are available to us. So definitely reaching out to your community, to other caregivers, and seeing what their experiences is. Because that's another big thing about community, is that it can be very empowering and it can be very influential, because other people who have continued on this journey are more maybe in tune into what's going on, so they can be our guides. Because eventually, as we progress in this disease, we then take on that role of guidance, or guidance counselor, so to speak, where you can then help others that are just starting to navigate this very overwhelming environment.
Such a great point, Tracy. I remember there was this period of time when we needed to bring my mother into the Kensington, and I remember just trying to find the language that we could use to respectfully and responsibly tell her that we could no longer care for her, that my dad wasn't capable of caring for her anymore. And I remember my dad found somebody through the church who was a counselor, who almost did interventions in families where one of the loved ones needed to go into a home. And I remember turning to my dad and saying, there are people that do that. And when it came down to it, there was this resource that we had no idea. We thought we had to write the language, but it turned out that there was a professional who does it for a living. And she was so kind and so empathetic and forgave us, and then gave us actual words, actual vocabulary that made it, it was difficult, but it made it so much easier. And I had no idea that even existed. And it was only through the church, which at the time was really one of our only places for community. It was that and like a Yahoo group or something, this was 2006. It was just a different time. And I remember just realizing that I just had no idea of the amount of resources that were out there that would not have come to us unless we had been honest with people.
And free resources, it is such an expensive disease, but there are a lot of free resources out there, and Hilarity for Charity is a great starting point for that. In terms of looking for ways to find your community and find your people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's been such a pleasure as now we've lost my mom, to be able to share what I've learned has, I do it freely, and to be able to share, that we're some particular topics that I became very sort of an expert in. And now I probably get a call once a week from somebody being like, my mom's driving. What do we do? I need to take the keys away. And I'll sit with them and talk it through, and that's I'm also honored to be able to do that, and it's all through people sharing stories that's been possible.
I think it's also so important because there's so much about the experience of caregiving that a lot of the stress has to do with not knowing, right? The anxiety of uncertainty and what will come next and what it'll feel like, what it'll be like. And that's why they say that communities are wiser than individuals, because somebody out there has probably experienced or has some insight or wisdom into what might be in your future, and to be able to draw from that and learn from that can actually be a huge stress reducer. Just to be able to see a little bit into the future.
Yeah, and a cathartic vent sometimes lead to and the arrival of an amazing resource.
I saw a question in here from someone. Do you have any advice on how to get through to someone, maybe an older caregiver who wants to be Superman like our dad did, because we tried again and again and again to get him to get help, to ask for help, and he just didn't want to. So do you have advice for how to reach out to an older person or anybody really who is resisting the help? How do you get through to somebody like that?
I find that a big part of that resistance is feeling like you have a sense of control. And if anything, along with memory is lost in this, is that sense of control. So sometimes our older caregivers feel like this is the only thing I can do. So and offering or being open to help can oftentimes be seen as a weakness, which we know is definitely not the case. So sometimes it's as simple as adjusting your verbiage. We're not here to help you. I'm here to, give you a time to take a break. I'm here because I need to do this for mom. And this is so kind of just shifting that perspective. Because if you come in and you tell someone, I'm here to help you, they might see it as like, well, I don't need help. I have this under control. And somehow that's taking away that sense of control that they have. And it's the only thing they can hold on to. And really, looking at where's that resistance coming from? What is it? Because they're worried that if you come in and you offer assistance, you might criticize how they've been doing things, or maybe mom isn't, in the best shape, and that will somehow be a reflection of you as a caregiver. And it's really, asking these hard and very tough questions sometimes to kind of look introspectively and say, why am I feeling resistant to care? And sometimes people don't want to go there.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I remember we would use my mom sometimes to help with my dad. We'd go to my mom when she was still, able to have conversations and say, can you help us like team up? Because we're really worried about dad. And we would enlist her help. And there were like mind games going on, but it worked, because then she would team up with us and say, yeah, you need more help, you need more support, you need to go spend the day on your own. And that would give my dad some freedom to go do that.
Permission. Yeah. To do it. She would say like, Dad, you're a mess. Right. And he was the one trying to help her all day. And I think it allowed him, it was funny. It was a lot of laughing, but it was also, I remember him saying like, can I just sit down? Like, I just want to sit down, and it was, we sort of were bending over backwards to try to find ways to preserve his ego and also give him what he needed,
And to any caregiver that's out there right now, I give you a huge amount of respect for even being here, for carving out this time to be watching a panel. I mean, I know like every second, every minute of the day is precious and so hard to find time for yourself. And so I'm just sending love to all the caregivers that were able to carve out the time to be here today. Bravo.
Bravo. And I just want to, echo what Kim's saying and just add in, there does not have to be shame. I am here as a product of this disease. We lived through it, and I am proud. I am proud that we had this disease because it taught me who I am, and brought whole new, light to my mother's spirit and my father's spirit, and we survived, and you will too. So I love what everybody's been saying. I keep hearing, sometimes you just need to hear, I can make it through one more day. And Kim and I and all the panelists are here to say, yes, you can. And we are here supporting you. And HFC has tons of resources. We would encourage everybody to check out those resources. I see a lot of them are posted in the chat.
Yeah, and then maybe one last question for the panelists. If you want to touch on the role that education through communities can play in turning purpose into action.
Well, I think that we have Caring Across Generations is a campaign that that I co-founded to bring caregivers together around advocacy efforts. And one of the things that we do is a caregiver corner once a month, where people kind of ask questions and connect their personal experiences and challenges with caregiving with some of the policy initiatives that are happening. And that education that there's some things that we can do as individuals, right? Tons of resources that we have to pursue. And then there's some things that we can change through policy and make more systems change. And just plugging in and getting that information can be really empowering, because it gives you a sense, one, that what's happening is not your personal failure or anything that you're doing wrong, but more that there's a design flaw in our system that doesn't value and protect and support caregivers. And there's things that we can do to change that. And so I think that education around what are some of those initiatives, what are some of those efforts, and many of them are getting supercharged right now. And I dropped a link to caringacross.org for those who are interested in finding out more about what some of those advocacy efforts are. We'd love to have you join us.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aijan. Anyone else? Jason?
I would echo, what Aijan said. I think education is power. Knowing that your role as a caregiver is a very powerful one, and that if it wasn't for you, our country would be in a lot worse shape than it is. And I think COVID has demonstrated that. And it's unfortunate that it's taken a global pandemic to really highlight and underscore just how essential caregivers are, caregivers for children, caregivers for older adults, caregivers across the spectrum. This pandemic has really brought to life the words of former First Lady Carter. And so that education is powerful, and I think advocacy is critical. I've seen so many folks in the chat talk about just the struggle to navigate work while providing care. Which is just something that's too common for the community, and the lack of infrastructure to support that is really clear. So advocacy is a great way to channel that. But then also, I think there's a growing movement that is starting to value the insights of caregivers in how we develop policy and also research. So thinking about this from the research perspective, thinking about this in terms of brain health, there's a growing movement to validate the insights of caregivers, because they're so critical, particularly for dementia. You are the first responder for your loved ones living with Alzheimer's and related dementias. And for the longest time, your work has been essential, but it's not been valued, as Aijan said. It's not been valued by the workforce. It's not been valued by the federal government. It's not been valued by the research enterprise. But we're starting to change that on, I think, all those fronts. So I'd encourage you to look into www.alistforresearch.org, and I'll drop the link in the chat. But this is a movement that we started, Us Against Alzheimer's, to pool caregiver insights in a really rigorous and scientific way, so that we can point to the value of these insights to the research community and say, hey, when you're designing a trial, when you're designing a care model, you need to account for the lived experiences of these caregivers. Nothing about us without us. So I think there's a lot of value in that. It does, like with taking time today, it is time to advocate, time to take a survey. But I think that over time, the ripple effects of those actions are super powerful. And we're finding that out more and more, thanks to the work of everyone on this panel and of HFC, and most importantly, all of you. So thank you so much. And I'll drop that link right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Tracy, do you have anything to add at this point?
It's just, we are so strong, by nature of what we do as caregivers. And I really like how Jason said that, we are the first responders to this. When things go down, when, dad falls, who's the first one to try to get him up? It's us. And, really just encouraging everyone, just be patient with yourself and be forgiving of yourself, because it's not an easy role. It's not a role that any of us signed up for, but here we are, and we do it every day, and we do it the best we can. And, sometimes it does feel like we're alone in this, but I hope that what we're able to get from this meeting today is that we aren't alone, and there is support out there, and there's so many people in the background that are doing so many great things to really, hopefully in the future, get so much more support that's needed for this population and our caregivers, because it's a lot of work that needs to get done, but it's getting done.
Awesome. It's a great way to wrap it up. Thank you, Tracy, Reyes, Jason Resendez, and Ai-jen Poo. Thank you so much to our fantastic panel, and thank you, Hilarity for Charity, for hosting us. And Lauren, want to remind everybody out there that they will be back at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern with the next panel. So thank you, everybody who attended.
This is recorded, and this is going to be available. Everybody's going to get an email link who registered. Everyone's going to get an email link to this, so they'll be able to watch.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Happy
everyone.
Caregivers Day.
Caregivers Day.
Happy Caregivers Day.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to recognize all that you do every day to take care of your loved one. On this National Caregivers Day, we want you to know that you're not alone, that we celebrate you, and we're so glad you could take some time for yourself today and join us.
Hi, everyone, and happy National Caregivers Day to the caretakers out there. Thank you, thank you, thank you today and every day. And I so hope you take a moment to celebrate yourself, to love on yourself, to give yourself some self-care and care for yourself. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mwah.
We're at the Hilarity for Charity County Fair. It is a fundraiser to raise money to raise awareness for Alzheimer's and fight Alzheimer's. We're basically having a big party where comedians will be operating carnival games, basketball, bumper cars. It's exciting. I'm excited.
When my mom, Adele, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease when she was only 55 years old, I spent some time just feeling really sad. And, we do this as a way for people to come together and to sort of laugh in the face of a really sad disease and to, of course, raise money.
My mom has been suffering from Alzheimer's for the last 15 years or so, and I'll do anything I can to raise awareness and raise funding.
Science tells us there's so much we can do to keep our brains healthy these days. So we have a puppy kissing booth that is for emotional well-being. We have some VR brain health games for mental fitness. We have the basketball rope game, whichever one for physical exercise. The meditation is on the Ferris wheel. I'm really excited that people can come have fun, but also maybe learn a bit about keeping their brains healthy.
I mean, it's so different than anything I've ever done before in terms of a fundraiser. I just think it makes it so fun. It makes it so accessible.
The proceeds go to research and they go to funding in-home care for people who can't afford it.
Alzheimer's doesn't have to be a sad, heavy thing when you're fighting against it. You can come to a carnival and have fun, but also do something for Alzheimer's.
Hey everybody, this is Andrew Reynolds. Happy National Caregivers Day. You all are doing incredible work and we're all very, very grateful. And I'm happy to know that you are taking a little bit of time for yourselves today to celebrate all the amazing work that you do.
Hello, caregivers. It's Braden Bishop here from the Seattle Mariners. I just wanted to welcome you in, say thank you for everything you do. I know firsthand how difficult it is to be a caregiver. My mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2014. So we feel what you're going through, and I say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Hello, friends. The Rosalynn Carter Institute for Caregivers is delighted to wish you all well on National Caregivers Day. We are so proud to be a part of HFC's CareCon as we celebrate and recognize your tremendous contributions, especially during this pandemic. We asked Mrs. Carter what she wanted to share with you this week, and here's what she said.
It's a great pleasure for me to join you in celebrating the more than 53 million unpaid caregivers in our country who are juggling work and other family responsibilities and putting their own physical and mental health and well-being at risk. Caregiving is hard, even on the good days.
Hi, I'm Seth Roken. My wife Lauren and I have experienced firsthand the devastating effect that Alzheimer's and other dementias can have on families. Although there's no cure for Alzheimer's, there are lifestyle changes we can make that build Alzheimer's resistant brains and mitigate its onset.
Alzheimer's disease begins in the brain over 20 to 30 years before the first symptom of memory loss begins. And that gives us ample time to make brain healthy choices.
In fact, 1 in 3 cases of dementia may be prevented by living what we call a brain healthy life and following 5 key brain health habits. A lot of people don't realize that they can actually take care of their brains. We know things like exercise are good for the heart and lungs, but the missing piece is that they actually also impact your cognitive ability. At HFC, we are committed to Alzheimer's prevention, care, and education. And we have the tools to make a difference with cutting-edge technology and world-renowned scientific partners. HFC Science Advisory Board boasts leading brain health experts in the fields of neuroscience, nutrition, cognitive sciences, and more. We've also developed coursework to teach students at all levels the key ways to keep our brains in shape. In fact, we even conducted a study that landed us in the American Academy of Neurology, which is a pretty big deal. We also know that an important way to keep our brains healthy is by having fun, which is why we host exciting one-of-a-kind fundraisers to raise awareness and drive donations throughout the year. As much as we've accomplished, this is only the beginning, and there's still so much more work to be done. Your donation today will help us teach future generations about living brain-healthy lives and change the trajectory of Alzheimer's disease for good.
I think we're back. Hi, everyone. I'm getting the hang of this Zoom thing. Look, I have a special guest with me. It's my wonderful husband, Seth. I am hoping that everyone enjoyed their first panels. I feel like I'm speaking to a room in which everyone could applaud, but that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, let's hear it for the first panels.
We are so excited to talk to you about brain health. It's something that is a huge part of the work we do here at HFC. We want everyone to learn about the very easy to do things that you can do to take care of your brain. We lead a brain healthy life.
We try to.
Most of the time.
Yeah, I think it was a surprising revelation that you even could take care of your brain. For me, I didn't know that was a thing. I knew you could take care of your heart and your lungs and things like that, but no one had ever taught me how to take care of my brain. So when we learned that, we thought, oh, that would probably be good to take care of your brain. So there are 5 main things you can do to take care of your brain, and we will tell them to you right now. They are getting a good night's sleep. They are getting exercise. They are being nutritious. They are exercising your mental fitness and overall emotional well-being, lack of stress, things like that.
Obviously, being a caregiver, your time is pulled in all sorts of directions, and you may not have the time to incorporate all of these things into your life. So one that, it may not be the most fun thing to do, but nutritionally speaking, one of the things that you can do to really care for your brain is limit the amount of sugar. So you can look to different things like berries to give you a sweet treat, which can help your brain. Instead of chocolate, try dark chocolate.
The less fun version of chocolate.
But there are so many healthy things.
It's better than no chocolate,
And-
probably. Yeah.
And we share brain healthy recipes on our social media and our emails, and
there's actually some very good ones. There's these blueberry brownie muffins, cupcakes.
She calls them cupcakes. They're muffins,
but they are delicious, I have to say, and incredibly healthy. Yeah.
And so it is little things. If you do one little thing every few months and add it to your routine, then perhaps you can start taking care of your brain. We actually have a little gift for everyone. For the first 50 people that complete the post-event survey that you will get after this, you're going to get. We have a little care package with some brain health items. We're going to Vanna wipe this for you. So you want to do the survey.
Do the survey, and 50 of you will get, here's a water bottle.
A little tote from Headspace. Who doesn't love a tote?
Another tote.
Oh, we're a little blurry.
Oh, we are a little blurry. No, it's not.
Oh, it's not working.
Unblur.
All right, I'm going to unblur for the package so it's not. Hang on.
Unblur.
There we
go.
All right.
We have this.
That's a lovely tote by Kensington, our presenting sponsor.
Ooh, a visor from Kensington.
Do you want to put that on and model it?
I do like a visor, to be totally honest.
There's a journal to record your thoughts. Look, journaling is so good for your emotional well-being. Just write the word fuck over and over again if you want. That's fine. It'll help.
Lauren does that. We have something from Alaska.
This is the sleep. I wear the sleep mask every
Lauren
night.
does wear the sleep mask.
It has honestly, it really actually helped improve my sleep. Light, even though you think at night it's dark, your room is dark, put a sleep mask on. Truly, it helps my sleep quality.
You can make your own kombucha.
Kombucha is good.
Kombucha is healthy for you.
This is the Alzheimer's Prevention and Treatment Diet. This is written by Dr. Richard Isaacson, who is an amazing doctor and researcher whose work we support, and we collaborate him on brain health research.
You get a Rivet Revolution bracelet. They're a partner of ours that has been very great. You get whatever's in this. This is very heavy.
I don't know what's in there. This is something for thieves. This is for thieves. Oh, it's a botanic. It's a spray. It's a room spray.
You get some sparkling herbal tonic.
We had this at one of our brain health dinners. It was delicious.
It was very good.
This is a spray that will help de-stress you. There's lots of good stuff. Oh, you're going to get Dr. Sanjay Gupta's new book, which is called, Keep Sharp, Build a Better Brain at Any Age. Lots of good stuff in here, guys.
A coupon for light-saving glasses.
Felix Ray glasses.
Blue light blocking glasses.
Anyway,
a whole mess of things. 50 of you will get it. So
fill out the survey as soon as you get it. It's a contest.
Exactly.
And good luck to those of you.
But we're also going to select some names at random, and those people will just be the winners right now. Lauren, I'll allow you to do this.
Seth made this bowl.
I did make that bowl. So.
Because as part of our mental fitness, we started doing pottery to learn a new activity.
There you go.
So there's
Elliot Gesnier. You win a brain health packet.
Hope Schwalls.
Hope Schwalls. You win a brain health packet. Oh, we're doing a third.
A third.
Jacqueline McCauley.
Come on down. But
come on down.
You can't go anywhere. You're at your house.
Maybe
You're
run
not
around,
going
run around your living room a little.
Yeah,
bit.
a little.
All right.
All right. We always try to drive the computer at the same time.
Exactly.
Okay. This is amazing. We're going to go into our second panels of the day. There's panel number 2, which is finding support, which is moderated by Lisa Gibbons. Our panelists are Rita Ghatak, Kelly McCormick, Rachel Norris, Carlos Olivas, Dr. Jennifer Olsen, and Monique Wilson. And then Care Path 2.
This panel will be keeping your brain in shape is the topic. Dr. Sanjay Gupta, the chief medical correspondent for CNN, will be moderating the panel. You have Alexandra Drain, Annie Finn.
Who made the blueberry muffin / cupcakes if you're Seth.
It was a good thing. Whatever it is, eat it. Pamela Price, Drew Ramsey, and Ayesha Shirzai, and Dean Shirzai.
Dr. Shirzai.
Yes.
So again, the tech gods, I think, will whisk you into the rooms you're supposed to be in. And then I will be here at the end to thank you again.
Yes.
Have fun.
We did it.
And that's our cue to get going. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, HFC, for your leadership, for your example, your energy, for all the great work that you're doing for Alzheimer's and caregiving. And congrats on the very first CareCon. I'm Lisa Gibbons. I'm the daughter of a mom and a grandmom with Alzheimer's. And when my mom got sick, like with many of you, you know how it changes everything. And so I took what I thought was a hiatus from TV hosting to figure out, what do I do now? What's my seat at this table? So that was in 2002. And since then, I created Lisa's Care Connection to offer tips and tools and strategies to help families like mine. So this has become a very important part of my identity. And I couldn't be more proud to be in the company of the other moderators today, these spectacular panelists. Thank you to Kimberly and Ashley for her great panel that happened, their panel that happened before. I am especially excited about my fabulous panel. Welcome to each of you. I know they're going to provide a lot of insight for you, a lot of advice, a lot of support, and a real sense of community that hopefully will help us figure out this caregiving challenge and make us feel stronger because of it. So thank you all for being such a resource today. If you are a caregiver watching us, we are your people. So I'm going to look at 3 things with these fabulous guests. 1, what it's like. 2, what you can do. And 3, why it's urgent to get help. So hi, everybody. Dr. Olsen, I'd like to start with you, if I may. I think that caregivers are probably among the most amazing problem solvers of all time. So let's look at the positives based on your work. Can you share what you found to be the skills that caregivers have that we can all learn from?
Hi, Lisa. Thank you for having me. I think that the key skills are around logistics. You think of a caregiver who's handling medication schedules, food schedules, doctor's appointments, making sure that every bit of household and life elements are taken care of. That's an incredible amount of work that has to be coordinated. And then the second major skill that I think caregivers are really amazing at is paperwork, insurance, coordination. I think it's the thing that we all dread, but if I were to hire somebody on a team, I'd go to look for somebody who has caregiving experience because they've tackled the most challenging things and often under grace and gratitude, with an approach of grace and gratitude. So we can all learn from caregivers.
Good one. And I don't know if you got a proper introduction. Can you just tell us a little bit about your work? Your career is like massive, about the focus of your career right now.
Sure. I'm currently the CEO of the Rosalynn Carter Institute for Caregivers. If you watched during the intermission, Mrs. Carter has been an advocate for caregiving for nearly 80 years when she first had a caregiving experience in her story, in her family's story.
So she and I work together along with a team based in Georgia to support caregivers' health and well-being. And before this, I was in public health doing epidemiology. So if there was ever a time to have a public health and caregiving convergence, this is the time for us. And so that's why I'm so excited to be here at a time when people are experiencing COVID isolation and caregivers need our help more than ever.
More than ever. And I do want us to spend more time talking about that later on. And your work and your organization has been so important. Thank you. I want to turn to Dr. Ghatak right now, because we all know every journey is unique, but I do think there's some universal truths. Can we talk about what you see in your work that's really hopeful as caregivers find connection with each other?
Thank you so much. It's such a great honor to be here today. And I think that most of my life has been spent in the field of gerontology and caregiving, but I am also a caregiver for the last 35 years, long distance with my parents and then with my in-laws who live with us. So I think that what is hopeful today, which is so wonderful, is that in the clinical settings, we are recognizing caregivers as being a critical part of patient care. So for example, especially in the field of dementia, if you look at that and what Dr. Olsen just mentioned, there are multiple aspects of care, whether it's just the medication, the day-to-day management, health navigation, and we are recognizing the caregiver as being an integral part of this. So that's hopeful that the caregiver should become part of the medical record so that their physicians can reach out to them. That's a very hopeful sign. The other is that focus on caregiver health, self-care. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I start my consult by asking, where are you in this journey? What is happening to you? What is on your plate? Are you able to take care of yourself? Finding that network of care, finding the support. So we are at a very good time. And finally, I'm part of several national entities that are doing a lot of work in this field, where it's still slow translation to the community, but a lot of work is happening.
You know, I appreciate all the points that you just made, and I wonder if people joining us today can relate to what you said, which is awareness of self. First of all, the voice for the caregiver being so important. Those are the optics. That's the frontline worker who is often not being considered in all these, in the science, in the decision-making, in the psychosocial piece of it. But when you ask a caregiver, how are you? Typically the response will be, well, she's doing okay today, or he fell and, you know, he's having a hard time. And coming to that first person is really hard. So thank you for those points. Our guests today on this panel, who are members of the HFC support group, really excited to hear your points of view. Carlos, can we start with you and talk about some of the stressors? Let's start with really, what was the thing that prompted you to first seek support anyway?
Hello, happy National Caregiver Day. I'm Carlos, I'm from Sacramento, California. And what prompted me is, I guess we have to go all the way back to the beginning when I started this journey. I received a phone call from my dad's dentist. I was the emergency contact for my dad. They called and said, we have some concerns. Sorry. So we have some concerns about your dad. And then from there, the journey progressed. We went to a primary care physician. He was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. We didn't receive too much information after that. It wasn't until I kind of read up and researched and advocated to see a neurologist. I told the primary care physician, let's refer him to a neurologist. It was there where I received the diagnosis of dementia, Alzheimer's, and we were directed to a social worker. The social worker gave us some paperwork and some resources, and I reviewed it and I denied it. And then
Denied it, just didn't want to know?
I resisted seeking. And it was one night where I went to a friend's house. We had a couple beers and I was trying to relax, but I was angry. I was pissed. I hated Alzheimer's. And it was hard to differentiate hating Alzheimer's and my dad at the same time.
Wow.
I was
wow.
And I had some experience with dementia. I mean, not dementia, depression. And I felt myself really thinking deeper and deeper. It was in the middle of the night after coming home and trying to really release what I was feeling, where I ended up calling the Alzheimer's Association and getting them, getting some information from them and then getting into a support group. And then from there, I evolved into multiple support groups.
I love this story. I love your candor. I love coming face to face with the thief and saying, this really sucks. I am mad as hell, right? And I know everyone here has been there. When I was on my journey of caring for my mom, my grandmom, it's so isolating, as we know. I felt like nobody got it. So in addition to being physically and mentally exhausted all the time, I just felt really misunderstood, which I know all of you can relate to. Rachel, let me toss this one to you. I think you probably get that as well as anyone. You've been through hell and back caring for your mom. At what point did you say, either I just don't know if I can do it, or I know I can't do it alone?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Rachel Norris. I grew up in Virginia and moved to Pittsburgh. So when I was 21, I graduated from school in Pittsburgh, very excited to start the new journey in my life. And 1 month later, my dad died, and it was super sudden. Took me totally off guard. No one was expecting it. So I went home to spend some time with my mom, and I quickly realized that the memory problems that my mom had been having, that my parents had very lightly talked to me about, had progressed to a point that I was completely unaware of. And I took her to her doctor, who happened to be a neurologist, and she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I went from being completely unaware that there was really anything wrong to being an only child caregiver for my mother, who had early onset Alzheimer's. Wow. So I started by looking for help as far as what to do. I didn't even know what Alzheimer's was. So I just kind of collected information here and there. My parents are part of a great church community. So there were some folks that came forward to help me, which was great because I really didn't know where to start. So once I kind of established my footing and kind of got into the world of Alzheimer's, I looked for things like the Alzheimer's Association, and I looked for help for my mom. So I kind of created my to-do list of, how can I help my mom? What can I do to help my mom? So once I got my mom to Pennsylvania and I had her settled here, then I kind of realized, well, I'm kind of done with my to-do list. So how do I help her now? And then I realized that I needed to help myself.
Yeah,
so
that's the big aha moment, isn't it? Oh, what about me?
Yeah, exactly. So that's when I kind of turned and started reaching out and trying to find a support group. And I was so happy to find HFC, because it's very difficult as a young person to be part of a group where everyone is a significant amount older than you, because it's just such a different life experience and such a different part of your life. And I'm super lucky to be part of a group where it's all women taking care of their mothers. So we're able to connect with each other in such a special way. And I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to be working with HFC and to be part of a group that helps you care for your person, but also helps you care for yourself.
Which is so important, because what we know is that typically better care for caregivers translates to better outcomes for care receivers, for everyone. It's just so counterintuitive many times for us to put that focus on ourselves, because we have what my friend calls fog. Fear, obligation, guilt, right? And caregivers were in that fog so much of the time. Monique, let me ask you about your challenge and your ultimate choice to get support. I mean, can you tell us how it affected your day-to-day caregiving? We can't hear you. There you go. Yay.
No, hi, I'm Monique, and I am here in Atlanta. But my mom lived in Florida for years and was experiencing all kinds of memory issues that I didn't know about until I had graduated from graduate school, and we were having a conversation, and she just started talking about how, she was saying the same thing over and over again is the first thing. And so then I started saying, okay, wait a minute, I've got to get back to Florida, check on her, see what's going on. And then I started noticing that she was doing certain things. She was paying the mortgage twice. She was, all of those things were going on. And without any warning whatsoever, we were placed in this situation. Well, I have a sister, but I'm the only one really doing, and it kind of happens like that in family sometimes. And so I realized that I was going to have to do some heavy lifting on her side. But even after all of that, because that took years, I realized that about 10 years ago, and then I just recently moved her to Atlanta to be with me. But in that, all that time, I had been struggling with just dealing with it on my own and needed to find a support group that was going to help me just kind of process through everything that I was going through. And even though there were tons of groups around, I just didn't feel that sense of belonging. And so I was searching online, I found HFC, and HFC, I was looking for a while, and we were trying to make that connection, and it came together, found a group. And I am with a group of women that just basically a family at this point. We have not, we're just in this, right? And just
That's
like
so cool that there's your tribe, there's your people.
Yes, it's my people, it's my tribe. And it's really just helped me from a mental standpoint to be able to share and have conversations. I'm talking about, we cry, we laugh, all of those emotions that you think you can share with other people, we actually get to share that, even though we're not together and we're virtual. We really just have that thing going. And so it's been really a tremendous support. And I thank HFC for even forming anything like this to really help us do this. And so I'm so grateful. I feel great because I have them that I get to connect with, twice a month, and know that if I need to reach out, they're going to be there kind of supporting. And so it's been great. It's been great. A lot of other things going on with mom. It's still happening, but I tell you, I'm all the better for this group. So
amen. Amen. And Kelly, let's turn to you, because I'm sure you could relate to all of that. You, like the rest of this panel, you've got a lot going. You have a very big life. In addition to caring for your mom, can we talk about that piece of prioritizing self-care? And if you're doing that, does it create a better situation for your mom?
Hi, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of this panel. As you mentioned, I'm the caregiver for my mom, and I do think it is so important to understand what is going to be the best situation for you that would put you in the position to be the best caregiver for your parent. And I know there's a lot of decisions around that. As you mentioned, the fog feeling when you're a caregiver, there's so many different things, so many different options. And there is a lot of guilt with a lot of decisions that you're going to make. And I just think the most important thing you can do, again, is find that what you're going to be the most comfortable with, that will make you the best possible caregiver. So in the beginning, when I started this journey, and mine was somewhat similar to Rachel and Monique, I had no idea what was going on. I was suddenly thrown into you need to find some care for your mother. I was kind of the only one that was able to make those decisions for her, or the only one that I guess the family wanted me to make the decisions for her. So I was so confused, so overwhelmed. There's so many different options. I had really no idea where to turn to for help. And I think just through the process of finding different options, talking to different people, visiting a lot of different places, I found a place that I really love. It took a lot of work that I had no idea this process of finding care would be this overwhelming. But after I was able to do that, I think the most important thing was that I found a place and found resources with people that I liked and trusted. And once I was at that point, being able to get to the next part where you have a group of people that are supporting that decision, I think is the most important thing. Because as you mentioned, and we've talked about this in our HFC care group, it's just there's a lot of guilt. And I always have said, if you put your loved one in care, it's going to feel like it was too early, and it's going to feel like it was too late. No matter what, you're going to be.
No matter what, that's right.
Yeah, you're going to be stuck in this in between. So having the people around you that are going to support you and say, like, you made the right decision for you and for your loved one is so important. And that's why I love the women in HFC, my care group. Monique and Rachel and I are all in the same care group, and it's just so wonderful to have people that understand where you are and can say, you're making the right decisions for you and for your loved one, because you're going to show up as the best possible caregiver if you're happy and you're feeling like they're safe and you're feeling like it's a good decision. But again, it can be hard. It can be hard to think like what other people are thinking, and especially if they're not in the same position. So having people that support you, it means everything. And even just when you're in that role of caring for your parent or loved one. So I go visit somewhat regularly. Obviously, coronavirus has, impacted that, but I always feel like if I don't visit, I feel terrible about it, but it's really, really hard to visit. Like it's not the same person that you knew, and it's a different kind of connection. So it's just a balance of finding like, I'm going to be upset, but I'm going to feel guilty if I don't go. So it's just this like balance. And I think that, again, those people that can say it's okay to strike that balance and it's okay to not feel guilty when you're not there. And it's okay to, it's going to be hard when you are there, and that's all going to be okay. So
my mother used to say to me, show up, do your best, let go of the rest. It's that letting go of the rest piece that's so hard. But what all of you have said about your groups is, that you're getting validation that you're doing your best. You're getting a reminder. Your teammates there are holding up a mirror saying, look, you're trying, and that's all you can do is really try your best. Dr. Ghatak, I want to go to you and talk a little bit about what they've all been saying, which is, caregivers move forward. That's what we do. We put on a brave face, we carry on. But can you discuss some of the physical and the emotional effects of caring and what we should look out for?
Thank you for asking that. I think one thing I want to say, Lisa, is that everybody on the panel just mentioned about the suddenness of, the caregiver. I remember a quote I had read that, we take so much time to prepare for motherhood, and it's like years, and then it takes 9 months to be a mother and 9 minutes to become a caregiver. And that's what I had experienced when I used to get my calls long distance. So coming back to some of the warning signs, I think that when you are suddenly thrown in the throes of caregiving and there's everything to be taken care of, like planning the care or the doctor's visits or even the specifics of diagnostics, I think we just sometimes stop breathing. And, the signs are typically fatigue and being overwhelmed and losing focus and trying to manage so many aspects. I mean, all these beautiful people on the panel right now, you're managing your own lives, your own health, your own families, and then you have a parent to take care of. So I think it's very important to know when you start this journey that there are physical symptoms, there are psychological symptoms, and there are mental health symptoms. It's been written about in every research journal, and we need to be aware of it. So unless you step back and say, am I taking care of myself? And I know it's so hard to do. It's so hard not to feel guilty. So if there is direct evidence, which is evidence-based research that shows heart disease, respiratory illness, chronic fatigue, then just depression, all of these are side effects of caregivers. And one of the things, Lisa, we're trying to lobby for is for primary care doctors, when you do go and make a visit, you ask them, are you a caregiver? Are you experiencing any of these? And then helps guiding them, because caregivers do not stop. They are just constantly working. So those are the signs, and we have seen so much of evidence of physical and mental correlates of caregiving. And this is becoming much more with dementia because there is an unpredictability of the disease. We don't know what stage they are in, what's going to happen, how much losses are going to occur. So it's a complicated situation.
You mentioned the depression, and Carlos, you had said that was one of the things that you experienced. I think it's such the loneliness, sadness, depression, those feelings are very common companions to the caring journey. And then you moved back home, I believe, to take care of your dad, which I would assume many people joining us right now can relate to the role shifting and triggering a lot of childhood trauma, the relationship changes. Can you tell us how you dealt with that? Because I think it was very resourceful that you used the arts.
Well, that's a good question. How I guess coped with it was just kind of, I guess, being engaged with it and finding avenues and an approach to being the best friend to my dad. And I don't know, just really overcoming those traumas. I'm overcoming them right now. I mean, today, my dad said something about my driving when I was driving him to his girlfriend's house. But it's like those things I have to like suppress. I have to kind of bury them and put on a happy face and say, yeah, Dad, I'm a horrible driver. Who taught me how to drive? And it was him. But I have to kind of be creative in my own self-care.
And not trying to talk him out of the feeling that you're a horrible driver. That's the thing that we have to remind ourselves, right? That we have to join them in their disease because they can't participate at that level with us. And of course, now the disease is harder. The pandemic has made a bad situation nearly impossible, I think, for caregivers, for millions of caregivers. I mean, look, they're worried about getting sick. They're worried about their loved ones getting sick. A lot of services have been cut off. And in a report that you guys may have seen that came out just this week, most say they're experiencing a very dramatic increase in stress, like up 80% and more. So Dr. Olsen, can we talk about what can be done, what is being done to combat this COVID-19 isolation and social distancing pressures on caregivers?
I think that's where HFC is really shining. The groups that they have created, support groups, are critical. We and some other organizations have one-on-one coaching. Much like the groups, it's someone to talk through the problems or just to sit with and cry. I think the other thing that we see now is to think about who are the people that are caring for caregivers, and how can we engage them in the conversation. I often think about when somebody tells you to go to the having a baby analogy, when somebody says that they're having a child, you bring over maybe some casserole or something, you bring gifts. When somebody tells you that they're in a caregiving role or that someone they love has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, there's kind of a slow step back from that person.
Sometimes it's a run to the exit, right?
It is, because you don't know what to say or what to do. There's no like Hallmark card, casserole to bake kind of experience. And so I actually think that the onus has to be on people who are not caregivers to stand in that space and just stay connected to caregivers. Maybe it is to just put a casserole on the front door or to leave a note or to send a text, or just to be there with somebody and not have expectations. But I think one of the biggest challenges is to not think that caregivers need another thing they need to do. Do they need to find a group? Do they need to find a coach program? If you're not a caregiver, right, and you're a caregiver, maybe you're on this call because you know somebody in your life who's a caregiver. What can you do to be supportive of them? And I think all of the people that we work with, I think of caregivers as some of the most altruistic. Every caregiver we work with is eager to help other caregivers not go through the same journey. And so I think the caregiver peer network is an amazing network in every community.
Let's throw that out to our caregivers then. What should people be doing to be helpful? What was the first thing that somebody did where you went, oh, thank God somebody offered you X? What was it? Rachel, you first.
I think for me, being so young and being fresh out of college, my friends were still very close to me. So, I was really fortunate that when I went through a period of, darkness, being busy, whatever, that some of my friends reached out to me and said, hey, I haven't heard from you in a week. Are you okay? Where are you? What's going on? Like, how are you doing? And just knowing that someone is thinking about you, I think is a really special thing, because you're constantly thinking about someone else. So
and when you could say to them, Rachel, that you're not okay, and they can receive that and not necessarily try to talk you out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think finding people that you can be open with is so important, because joining the support groups is great, but your support group, it's at a special time, and it's a special part of your day you're setting aside, but what about the rest of your day? What about the rest of your week? And I think being able to confide in people is really special and really helpful. Yeah.
What's a great way to help, Monique?
I would say, so in my situation, so I spent all of my young years in Lakeland, Florida, and mom was living there forever. And so while I was here in Atlanta, she was going through what she was going through. What I needed was help from someone in Lakeland, which we had a few people who would just go and check in on mom for me and everything. And so that was really, really, really helpful. So if someone came to me and said, Monique, I'd support, especially in situations where you're away from the person. And there's a lot of that going on right now with caregivers, that they're not in the same place and they're having to find resources and help. And so if somebody would have just said, Monique, I'm going to go check on your mom at least twice a week, make sure that, she's eating or whatever, I mean, that would have been a tremendous help. So I had a little bit of that, which was helpful, but then I realized that she needed more, and then I had to move, and then I moved back to Lakeland, and then eventually moved her back to Atlanta.
I think Dr. Olsen may have been saying the one thing that caregivers don't need is to figure out what they need. So when someone says, well, let me know how I can help you, it takes a different skill set and a different kind of switch in our brains to be able to say, yeah, could you come pick up the laundry? Could you sit with mom for an hour? But oftentimes those are kind of those empty asks, like, let me know if you need anything. You really do need stuff, but wouldn't it be great for somebody to come forward and say, how about if right? How about if I did this? I know this group would agree that as far as caregiving in general, we are getting much better about having a national dialogue about it, but not having enough real conversations in boardrooms, not enough support at the state level, the federal level. Maybe Dr. Olsen, Dr. Ghatak, this is good for you to talk about what's being done to sort of improve these support mechanisms for caregivers. Dr. Olsen, you want to go first?
Sure. I think a lot of it is awareness, right? That that boardroom conversation, companies and employers talking about caregiving needs to happen, obviously, and legislative opportunities in government are there. I think a lot about smoking as an example, and how to reduce smoking, there were policies put in place, fines from your insurance company sometimes, helplines, commercials, some gross and some funny, and all of that had to happen together. Workplaces, legislators, health departments all had to work together to reduce that smoking rate. I think caregiving needs that same type of approach, right? Employers need to think about approaches to supporting their employees, pharmacists, who are some of the first people that meet caregivers, because that first thing a lot of people do is pick up medication, right? How can they be part of a solution? How can dentists be part of a solution? A lot of people skip dentist appointments as one of the first things they skip in taking care of themselves as a caregiver. What are those, where are those places where we are kind of building a more supportive environment so that we're not depending on the caregiver to do the self-identification? I think that all has to happen, and it has to happen kind of at every level, kind of caregiving in every conversation in some ways. Every time we think about everything from tax policy to leave policy, where is caregiving in that discussion?
Where is caregiving in those discussions? Really, really great. Dr. Ghatak, do you want to add on to that?
I think everything Dr. Olsen said is just absolutely right on. I think you really need to start the dialogue. I think it has started because we are seeing more and more hospital systems and healthcare systems take note, but it really has to be a national impetus, because you have to realize that older adults, especially with dementia patients, we don't have a lot of resources available to them other than adult day health programs, some of the county programs. So we need to make this a national dialogue. How do you take care of the caregiver that is taking care of somebody that is likely to become very disabled? And with dementia patients, there's a whole lot of other incapacities. So I think it's starting, but we need to do a lot more. We need to focus on this just like you said, like the smoking campaign, but it has to be, as I say, relentless, and it has to be constant.
I'm assuming there are a lot of people joining us who maybe are in their beginning steps of the journey. Or no matter where we are with this, it's always kind of good to get that look back. So can the support group members answer for me, if you were speaking to yourself however many years ago when you first had those 9 minutes, as you said, that you realized, oh my gosh, now what? What do you wish you would have said to yourself? Kelly, start for us. What do you wish you would have known? What do you wish you could say to that person now to make it better?
Well, I think the thing I would say, if I could go back in time, is to just be very, I guess, like gentle with yourself. I think that it's so important. You have a tendency to be very hard on yourself in the process of finding care for your loved one. And also to accept help. That was really, really difficult for me in the beginning. I felt like I had to do everything. I felt like I had to be me that made the choices and like made the hard decisions. I think that part of that was that I was the one, like, I guess, accepting that role for my family. But as we just talked about, like what you can do for caregivers, a lot of my friends were offering to do things. And I think specifically one of the things that was the most helpful to offer was I had a friend who was like, I will go visit places with you. And it is so hard to make the decision of what place to have your loved one. And it's hard to be objective. And so I think if I would have accepted sooner someone going with me and seeing places, it would have been a much easier process for me, and like more, I could be able to more accept that whole process in general. So if you're wanting to help someone, I would say like offering to do that was such a big deal for me. And then also, I think other than that, there are a lot of resources online. I didn't know about them at the time, but I think there's so much stuff that you can find. I mean, we've talked about a lot of those resources today. I literally started not knowing the difference between assisted living and independent living and, Alzheimer's care and, any of it. I had no idea what Medicare or Medicaid would cover. And it's also convoluted and confusing. And I think finding those resources early and then accepting help would be the two things I would say most helpful.
I love that you mentioned having somebody else not only witness what you were doing and what you were going through, but physically being there. Because I think sometimes when we're overwhelmed or when we're in grief and when we're in that state of shock, we can't even access what we know in our brains, right? So because we do have that fog. So to have another set of eyes and ears and somebody just be there in the physical space with you is really nice. You mentioned receiving help. We have a mantra at Lisa's Care Connection that is breathe, believe, receive. And of those things, receiving tends to be a really hard one for caregivers. Can anybody relate to that? Carlos, did you have a hard time receiving help? There's that whole big platform going on now, Man Enough to Care, which is a beautiful campaign that's happening, focusing on men like you who are caregivers, who do experience it differently. It's 2/3 women who are caregivers about, and 2/3 of the brains being diagnosed are women's brains. Did you find it different? Did your gender make a difference in you getting help and being able to receive help?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my dad has a stigma about his diagnosis, and it kind of like overlaps to me. I have a stigma of being a caregiver. When I first started, I told people I was supervising my dad's health. And, I was actually a caregiver. I was a full-blown caregiver, and getting that help was kind of I was resistant to it. It's like, why do I need help? It's just my dad. I can take care of him.
I'm just the son, I'm just the daughter. We hear that a lot, right? I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. But somebody mentioned earlier, you were the one, the designated person. There's always one, it seems, who either wears the badge, they put it on themselves, or it's put on them by others in the family. Do you, Dr. Olsen, in your work, do you hear a lot of kind of family resentment, those family dynamics of trying to deal with someone in a caring situation?
I chuckle because I think family challenges are one of the most common elements of every kind of caregiver story that we hear at some point, either early in that kind of designation phase or when decisions are getting tough, or people who, think they have different rights around those decisions. And that's constantly a source of stress. Again, that's another amazing caregiver skill. They're really good at mediating family drama, whether they want to admit that in the moment or not. It's an amazing skill that caregivers end up either having or having to build because of those dynamics.
And kind of recognizing that the other family members may have different limits. I'm the middle child. I have a big brother and a younger sister. So I was that person used to kind of mediating and being the peacemaker. But recognizing what my brother brought to the table, what my sister brought to the table were very different skills than what I could bring to the table. They were hands-on, frontline. I was the longer distance. And Monique, you can relate to that because you've kind of had that scenario in your family as well. Were you sensitive to criticism from the outside world? Did you feel that people kind of getting in there talking about how you were doing it was really upsetting you?
Well, I don't know if it was upsetting me as much as I just really couldn't believe that people were even having an opinion about how I was doing this because no one was helping.
But
So
they do.
Yeah, I was like, really? Like, I mean, are you writing the checks in here? Like, are you? I mean, it was just it just really got crazy. So I didn't really. I just decided not to pay any of that any attention as I moved through and I made the decisions on my own. My sister was there, but she didn't have any dealings. She didn't want to have any dealings, obviously. I mean, she's involved, she cares, but her interaction with this is just very different. And so, I just totally didn't allow them to egg me on in any kind of way because I knew I had to do it. And I pretty much was doing it on my own. And so as the part of like receiving help too, I wanted help. I just didn't have too many people offering. So that was the difference between, someone saying I want to help and you not wanting it. I mean, I would have taken anything that I could get. And so it was difficult. So.
Yeah, I always talk about the kind of gold star. We feel like, there's a place in heaven for caregivers to do it all themselves. We're going to get that gold star, man.
Yeah, I don't want the gold star.
Yeah, you were saying, I'll give it up.
Yeah, I don't want the gold star. Okay. I listen. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on too with, just people saying, oh, Monique, you're going to be blessed. And I was like, I'm just doing what I am supposed to do. I mean, like I would do this. So, I mean, I don't necessarily want to be blessed by it. It's just, I'm doing it. This is what you're supposed to do. Right. And so it's been interesting. So.
But aren't you amazed? I remember at certain points feeling like, oh my gosh, I am able to, feeling proud and then feeling like maybe I shouldn't be proud because really I'm just fulfilling my responsibility. That quote about caregiving calls upon you to kind of lean into love that you didn't think was possible. What were the things that you just didn't think were possible that you actually managed to pull off? I mean, anybody jump in on that? We've had those moments, right?
Yeah.
Where you go, damn, I'm good.
Yeah. They were crazy. Like I could not believe that I would even move back to Florida from Atlanta, just totally make that decision, move my whole life and just make a decision to just be there for however long I was going to be doing it and then move mom back. And all of this happened in a span of like 6 months. had sold her house there, brought her back, got all, I mean, it was crazy, guys. Like, it was crazy. I'll let, Rachel or Kelly chime in on theirs, but I don't.
You did everything.
Yeah, I was like, I don't want anybody patting me on the back for any of that, because it was crazy. Okay, I did it. I'm happy I did it, but I wouldn't put that on anybody ever.
It changes you. And I know they're going to be wrapping us up with time, so I want to be sensitive to everybody joining, and certainly this incredible panel. Are there final thoughts that you just really need to say to these people that are watching you right now, that are depending on you for what your insights are? Anything that we really can't wrap up without saying?
I would just like to encourage anyone who has the means to seek out individual therapy as well as group therapy. I think it's a really important thing if you're able to get that one-on-one attention. There's just so many deep things that you can deal with in a one-on-one situation that, maybe you can't quite get into with a group. And I think that was actually something that really helped me, especially kind of, it is the long goodbye. And I was in a unique situation where, because my dad died, I grieved for that death, but then I, sort of lost my mom in this slow way. And being able to have that one-on-one therapy helped me to also grieve her loss. And it really kind of helped my emotional health in a way that I didn't realize I needed. So I just would really encourage anyone to do that if they can.
It's a great tip. All of you have had such great tips, great advice. This has been tremendously valuable to me as well. I hope everyone joining us has learned from this incredible panel. The folks at HFC are there to support you, to educate you, to provide you with resources. We try to do the same thing at Lisa's Care Connection. But the point is, like you were just saying, the point is reach out, get connected so you can feel more confident, you can be more competent on your caregiver's journey. So thanks to each of you, thanks to everybody joining us, and thanks especially to Seth and Lauren for this incredible opportunity. Congratulations, the first CareCon.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Wow. Wow. I'm so blown away. I don't want to toot my own horn or anything, but I feel like I know a lot about being a caregiver and brain health. And I feel like I learned so much just listening to these conversations. And I am so grateful to our incredible moderators for joining us today, our panelists for joining us today. Thank you to Kensington Senior Living, Sean Hayes, Lisa Gibbons, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, Kimberly Williams-Paisley, Ashley Williams, everyone who attended. Your lives are extraordinary and you are busy and your plates are full, and we want to do what we can to make your journey just a little bit easier. And I hope that you found today's event helpful and that you learned some stuff. Please take the survey after this. Again, the first 50 people will get a little care package with items to help you get started on your brain health journey. Stay connected to each other, join a support group, join an HFC virtual support group, reach out to your local resources. You've learned so much. Stay connected to us. Thank you so much for attending. Happy Caregivers Day. Please take a moment to thank yourselves for doing this. Again, you're in extraordinary positions and doing extraordinary work. And I say thank you. Everyone at HFC says thank you. And real quick, thank you to everyone at HFC who made this event possible. It was really amazing. Again, thank you so much. We'll see you on social media and email and maybe on Zoom again in the future. Who knows?